Hey guys, it's Matt. Less than 1 minute before I start reading chapter 24. Greg has informed me that the social media phenomenon Meatball, the woman who was doing all the social media commentary and egging on the Philadelphia looters that looted all those electronic stores and broke all that glass, she's raising money. You all might be interested. She's raising money for her legal fees, and she put at the end, she also needs a mani and a pedi. I'm not kidding. And those extra funds you give her, some of it's going to go for her personal hygiene. So I wanted to note that in case anybody was interested in finding her GoFundMe. Also, just to call out an objection I've gotten recently associated with the reading of the chapters. Somebody said associated with Jupiter ascending,
Matt, you've talked about Jupiter ascending 3 times over the years.
Well, see, this is a book, and a book must stand alone. I can't assume every reader of the book has a 5 or 10 year history with this channel, if you see what I mean. So in this chapter, I also talk for about a minute about the Golden Oscar. We've talked about that 6 months ago. Talk about Tony saying, I'll go off to do my own research for about a minute. I've talked about these things, sure, but see, this is a book that puts everything together. And I can't assume everybody that may pick up the book whenever it's put in print has a 10-year history. Do you understand that? Any genius that would make that sort of objection? Sorry. Chapter 24. How the Knot Elk hides a real spirit on Earth from understanding who it is and what it's doing here is a playbook that's hundreds of pages long. Some of its main plays surround the origins of life and where real people came from. It fosters absurd ideas like atheism stemming from the Big Bang and, of course, Darwinism. Other than Rosemary's Baby in the movie, no species has ever been born that was different from its mother. It's never happened in all of recorded history. So how does one species become another one? The second impossibility, which easily disproves Darwin, documents that no species has ever been born, say, species A, and has become species B before the end of its life, with the exception of perhaps Whoopi Goldberg. That fine woman we appreciated in Star Trek The Next Generation appears on The View as something completely alien to that first woman that we knew and loved called Guinan. There's not one example in all of history of either of the two things that Darwin's theory needs. Let that sink in. There's not one bit of evidence, one example in the entire history of the world, yet this bullshit is believed by most of society and science. Imagine a prosecuting attorney's opening remarks in a murder case if it was as weak as Darwin's evidence. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, over the course of the next few weeks in this trial, the state will demonstrate that this man sitting before you was the murderer, and we will seek a quick and decisive conviction from you. However, members of the jury, during the proceedings, we will not present a single piece of evidence showing the man to be the killer. What we will do is call to the stand several university PhDs to serve as expert witnesses who will claim that the man sitting there next to Mr. Gambini is the killer based on our pseudoscience. Oh, and by the way, these experts have been handed their opinions because we pay out billions of dollars in research grants. I ask you, how would that trial go? Even Jimmy Callow could defend Ralph Macchio against that horse shit. There's literally nothing in this world that supports Darwin's theory, other than a few monkey bones that they call Lucy. Because there's an army of minions in authority who line up to support Darwin with no more evidence than this drunken prosecuting attorney, it proves there's something very strange going on in this world. Incredibly, the entire scientific community sings the same tune about evolution, based on nothing but a poorly constructed story. The men in black didn't sit the entire scientific community down one day, one by one under a spotlight, like the Romulans did to Jean-Luc Picard, telling them what viewpoints are taboo and what they must promote. It's like most people are on a download of sorts. They all sing the same bird song decade after decade. There's never any dissent. Somehow 1 million scientists know to never question Darwin publicly if they want to keep their jobs. We observe this strange phenomenon all over society in hundreds of different places, meaning a narrative is put forth and somehow all the experts in the field just know not to question the official narrative. For example, the weather people on TV just know to never say a single bad word about I was talking about LucyBot, primate change and global charming. This strange phenomenon happens with hundreds of other topics near and dear to the Knot Elk. Nobody ever gets out of line or opposes the propaganda posters. Well, except us. And we've been marginalized by society and no longer matter. Uncle Fred pipes up at a crowded Thanksgiving family table.
Who's saying what about Darwin at my table here?
Oh, no, it's Matt. It's the conspiracy person of the family. Should we let him speak, family? He wants to participate in the conversation about evolution. No, Fred, don't let him speak. We're tired of his horseshit. Shove some more mozzarella into his mouth. You can see from the way the family is reacting that they don't want to hear our horseshit anymore. We've been marginalized. You just sit at the end of that table, be quiet, and make your gravy and mashed potatoes lake. That's right. Our friends and family don't want to hear it any longer, but in terms of any bits of evidence that we can scrounge together that lines up with common sense, it's almost always all on our side. Regarding the partial set of bones they call Lucy, the missing link they're so proud of, they have next to nothing. It's not even close to a full skeleton. The plastic skeletons with the jabbering, talking mouth that people hang on their doors around Halloween has more archaeological significance than the find Lucy. Common sense dictates that millions of missing link samples should exist by now, uncovered from people digging in the ground 100,000 times a year for 200 years. If there was an entire species that predated Homo sapien, we should find missing link bones almost every time we dig a post hole for a fence. These extinct monkey men should be popping up everywhere. These sorts of bones would not be rare. Look at all these ancient fossils that are supposedly preserved in some layer of mud or strata, whatever that is. People should be using the thigh bones of an ancient burnout species like Homo erectus as paperweights. They should be so common, these missing links. How the entire world marches together in unison regarding, quote, evolution, while also supporting 100 other scientific ruses that have no basis, is something that gives reality away. This reality delivers a perfect coordination of news, history, and science to keep bogus narratives ingrained in the population decade after decade. What we're talking about here is actually another aspect of stalled century. Maybe they have a series of Duke and Duke $1 bets going. Things like, do you think we can keep Vanna White turning letters longer than we can keep this bullshit narrative up? Or which bullshit narrative? Say Darwin's evolution. So you want to bet $1 Vanna White against if people will continue to believe in evolution? We think Vanna White can keep going easily into 2045. I don't know. Evolution might stall out by then. Typical bet? Standard $1. Why is the local news in every single big city on so many channels if it's the exact same news night after night? Around here in Philadelphia, the local channels are 3, 6, 10, and 29. They come on at 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. every single day. How can all 8 news programs be saying the exact same thing all the time? If anything were real, wouldn't one station, like once a year, have a different take on a news story than, say, the other stations? This proves they all get the same news feed from one place, the Ministry of Information. I guess outside the pages of the book 1984, it's called A.P. Thomson Reuters. And sorry, you soccer hooligans from the UK, BBC is not the Ministry of Information. That's like CNN in the United States. They get their shit from the ministry. It's a one-world system. We have major perceptual limitations in this avatar body, and we're not very smart while we're here on Earth. Again, I remind you, they renamed us recently Homo the sapien sapien, with the repeated tag to imply double dumb. The best way to view the human brain on Earth is as a governor or a limiting device on our true consciousness. We only have access to a small part of it while we're here. Our perception, intelligence, and wisdom seems like it needs to be reduced for us to have this earthly experience. Maybe this is why Alice was shrunk down in order to enter Wonderland, and it's some sort of metaphor. Of course, the first grade truther will yell, "Hijacked! Hijacked!" They'll say, it's all been hijacked. And how dumb the human is on Earth, once again, to them, is entirely attributable to creeps meddling with their fluoride ray guns and smart dust bombing runs. Again, it's not entirely one or the other. There's no doubt that the creeps have found ways to turn the volume up on this governor, making the population even dumber than intended, if you can believe that. But I'm pretty sure this earthly experience was not meant for our full perception and intelligence. Our full power is something that I don't think is confined to this place, and it exists, say, somewhere else, whatever that may mean to you. For crying out loud, we can only see the visible light spectrum and can't perceive about 99% of the other wavelengths that are all around us. University neuroscientists, who are supposed to be the top experts, still can't see past the brain itself to explain consciousness as they deliver their idiotic TED Talks. Looking for consciousness inside the brain and only there is like looking for the baseball play-by-play announcer inside the plastic radio. Consciousness is just a point of attention, a single snowflake on a mountain that we, through the ego brain, assign more importance to than the mountain itself. We are the mountain, and it's covered in these sorts of snowflakes. The ego mind and the body are double agents, loyal to this material world. The body only allows us a limited awareness, like a micron filter that screens out your well water. Creeps like Neil of the Grass-Fed will tell you that 70% or so of the entire universe is called this dark energy stuff. 70%. Then Mitch Pikachu will come along and say that 20% of it is not dark energy, but dark matter. Add that up. That means that over 90% of the universe, well, don't go looking for it, you poor devils, because you can't perceive it. It's certainly out there, of course, because we TED Talkers say it is. But all of that is imperceptible to your broke, governed-down asses. Well, what's left then? Well, the TED Talkers tell us that just under 5% of the entire universe is atomic matter, like waves in various frequencies, and matter itself, like a baseball. But even most of that, what's considered atomic matter, can't be perceived. Talk about a damn governor over the human. What? Well, what do we get to view, touch, and understand in this universe as regular people then? Cries the average man on the street holding a Subway sandwich. Tell 'em what they've won, Johnny. They've won the visible light spectrum. You get 0.005%. That's a percentage. That's even lower than it sounds. You get that much of the universe to play with. So enjoy that part, you great unwashed. This is like winning a showcase showdown at the end of The Price is Right and then being handed a Twinkie and shown the exit. But I bid $1. You see, you conspiracy people shouldn't question the authority figures in this world who give their TED Talks on how things in this universe work. Those scientists have 0.005% of the universe available to them by their own account, informing their theories. By their own accord, they only have this tiny little sliver to work with, meaning they lack over 99.9%. This is like being given a math equation to solve that has hundreds of variables like X, Y, and Z. But the Mitch Pikachus of the world only know the value of one letter. We scientists know the variable X, and we know it equals 666. Well, what about all the other variables in the equation? Well, we don't know, so we just plug in 33 each time. So after all of this, what filters down to the poor devil on the street with his Subway sandwich? The average Joe gets his understanding of the universe from the TED Talkers. Both are deriving everything they know from 0.005% of the universe. The person on the street can't perceive the other 99.999. And that tiny scrap that he's been given through his Nova TV program is a lie to begin with, crafted by creeps working for something that literally feeds off the negative emotion of real people. Yeah, I can see why some people think that things are stacked against us. After that cheery news, I almost understand the screams and cries of the first grade truther. Hijacked reality! It's hijacked! Guess what, folks? Embrace the ignorance to a degree. This here, what's going on, it's all by original design. Even if the creeps have pushed it a little too far in one direction, it's all by original design. If you're over age 40, you probably remember the Army commercial. They ran it for over 20 years. Be all that you can be in the army. Be all you can be. But that's a truth drop. Here, be all you can be based on the limited deck of cards that we were given, or governed down, broke ass, get up from the pot, look down at it, tells you how low you are. But whatever you are here, as low as it is, as fiddlin' bends low, be all that you can be. Nobody's going to think that you have to be perfect with the little we have to work with. The Dumb and Dumber governors that are smacked on us when we're born are necessary in this place. If we came here with our full perception, full intelligence, and intuition, I doubt this experience would work for more than a few days. People like you and I can see through its ruse even now with the governors that we will always have as long as we're in this body. We can see through it now, and we've been fluorided up our entire lives. Imagine if we had full perception and brought all of that to this place, all that we're capable of. If we came in here with our full Wonder Twin powers, we'd probably look up at our mother as an infant, just a few days old, and say to her in perfect English, "Mom, there must be some sort of mistake. This ain't the place for an entity like me. How do I get the fuck out of here? Death? What's that? That ain't something I'm familiar with from where I came from." And she would look down on you and say, "Shit, the governor on this little baby's broken. Hey, little baby, listen up. Your degree of perception is not normal in this place. And you know what that means?" "What?" "It means your life is going to be extremely difficult. See, the dumber you are here, the more you go along with everything. Everything's supposed to be normal. Everything as it's supposed to be. It's the best the government can do. The more you go along with the narrative, the easier your life is. The more you have perfect perception, like you do, little baby, with a broken governor, or you're screwed. Your life's going to be tough. And the only way out of here? Death." To finish this section, incredibly, most university neuroscientists still believe that the brain is the only source of consciousness. That mushy thing between the temples is the original and only source of what they consider to be consciousness. What an absolute joke these TED Talkers are. And they're making the big bucks, getting whacked off in coat closets by other faculty members at university holiday parties. Now, you might think differently, but to me, it's all by design. It's very clear to me at this point. I trust that the spiritual part of me that's not here in this snow globe knows what it's doing, knows what's going on. I bet it knows exactly why it sent my broke, governed-down ass into this three-ring idiocracy. I don't need to know all the details while I'm alive. I trust I'm here for good reason, and I came here lacking all my superpowers. I understand that there's no benefit for me if things here are too easy, or I perceive everything as an infant. When one trains with heavy weights, the muscles begin to respond. No bodybuilder in a gym ever did a superset of bicep curls with 2 packs of cotton balls. To benefit, the work has to be hard. A learning reality system, using a strange AI analogy, would need to have a group of assholes here like Santa Claus Schwab, trying to make things hard on those of us who are close to completing our journey. A good game needs a good opponent, and no doubt, these jerks have been competent. But the first-grade truthers will continue to yell, "Hijacked!" We were just supposed to come in here like Risa, the pleasure planet on Star Trek, and just lie around under fruit trees. The problem with organizing your pickup truck army and fighting back is that's exactly what it wants you to do. It's all about harvesting energy. And what are you going to? You're going to overturn government systems? I mean, okay, we've been over this a million times, guys. People have accused me. Matt, you're too easy. As you see them as role players, and you're too easy on them. I hear you. I'm larger than they are. They're role players. It's a very short life. Society is not going to be transformed. The heaven will always pop through. So what? If your heaven is restructuring the government, have fun with that. That's not what I'm interested in. My heaven is what I did yesterday, walking through the park down here, and all the fall wildflowers, that golden stuff comes up. I don't know, little daisy things that are only that. And I said, as usual, heaven is here today. That's what I'm interested in. Heaven to me is not restructuring the House and the Senate. That's what it wants you to believe will deliver heaven, and it never will deliver. It'll deliver more hell the more effort you put into that bullshit. Truth drops all over the place all the time. You know, there's so many, it's absurd. The Harlem Globetrotters. For 25 years, you know who they played against? The Washington Generals. The Washington Generals were positioned as the bad guys to lose. Well, Matt, that can't be right. They would have been winning. They wouldn't position themselves to, well, not if it's a necessary truth drop or some sort of stuffed Lenin. The Washington Generals, the new football team, it's no longer the Washington Redskins. They're called the Washington Commanders. They're the Generals. They're the Commanders. Truth drop, truth drop. Guess how they won? By having fun. The Washington Generals always lost to the Harlem Globetrotters. The Harlem Globetrotters were not worried about what the Generals were doing, the Commanders. They were having fun. Isn't that an interesting truth drop? For us to have the proper experience here, this Earth needs a bad guy. And these creeps do a good job playing their role. Picture Star Wars with no Darth Vader. Just friendly aliens and droids carrying water around Tatooine. How exciting would that be? You'd walk the fuck out of the movie, and there'd be no plastic action figure sales. So based on what I mentioned just a minute ago or alluded to, other people may say, Matt, are there other clues here in this game you call Earth that tell us about our true nature? Yeah, I'm glad you asked. There are hundreds of thousands, potentially. We can start off with this beautiful axiom. The faker the reality becomes to you, the more real you become, if you see what I mean. The converse of that would be bad news for us. The more real the reality becomes, the faker we may be. For example, it would not be good news for us if you and I watched the TV news and the evidence started to pile up supporting things like the Big Bang. See, that presentation, as we watched, say it was getting more and more convincing as the decades went by. That wouldn't be good news for us. That would be a world demonstrating itself to being real. Fortunately for us, reality has shown its true colors, which in scientific terms is fake as shit. So the reality breakdown itself is a clue to our true nature and original selves. The dark reality gives itself away in how it behaves, which provides us with even more information about what we're doing here or what we're supposed to do. Your friends and family can't see the clues it generously has to provide us. After about a decade of diving into reality junkie research, as we all have done, one should come to the conclusion that if you look into any, quote, big topic presented by authority, by academia, by government, it very quickly breaks down. Its story or its presentation can't hold water and support itself if you follow the river, say, back to the source or its original tributary. There's no foundation to almost anything it presents as factual if it's important. How they keep getting away with this and how nobody can see it but us, that couldn't happen in a real world. Many of the asshole dark's presentations have actually become comical at this point. The details don't matter anymore. It has lost its professionalism. Remember, the axiom is, as reality gets more fake, you get more real. It's not inappropriate to put it this way. We come in here having no idea who or what we are. Being Tommy is necessary, at least initially, for a few decades. Wait, Mr. Author, be more specific. What exactly is false in what you say they present to us as important news or history? All of what it presents as important news and history is false. There's a serious problem with the official story in almost everything we've ever looked at. On the other hand, if the information or research is not an important part of science, not an important component of history or culture, then it's probably true. Who won Best Picture is not important. That information, if researched, will be accurate. Weather reports are mostly accurate. Who won the Super Bowl last year is not important, so anybody can easily find the answer. But as soon as the topic starts to tell us something about the nature of reality, which then leads us to an understanding of ourselves, what authority here says is happening moves further and further away from the truth, depending on how important the topic is in the first place. It's like a reality rule here that can be measured along a sliding scale. What the Washington Monument really is, and why it resides inside the Vesica Pisces, provides information on how creepy those are who run governments. So the official story on what those things are will be false. Whatever that thing is that presents itself as a statue on the top of the U.S. Capitol building will be blurred to us because it's probably rather important to them. The proletariat and the great unwashed are given a bunch of bullshit to chew on, like that statue on the top of the Capitol building in all black. That's the goddess of freedom. Didn't you know that? What the hell is the goddess of freedom? Don't ask that. It's the goddess of freedom. Now to our next exhibit. Remember, in this world, if it's important, it's hidden. If it's not that important, then it's easily researched. For example, why the Golden Academy Award or Oscar looks the way it does is not terribly important, but if it were to be revealed what it actually is, it's more important in exposing a fake world than, say, Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction losing Best Supporting Actor to Martin Landau for that horrific movie and performance in Ed Wood. Ugh! I mean, I don't like Samuel L. Jackson at all. There's nothing more annoying to me in the entire world than the Spike Lee, Samuel L. Jackson, and Charles Barkley Capital One credit card commercials. But he really did get shafted in losing Best Supporting Actor for his role in Pulp Fiction. Sorry. Therefore, researching who won Best Supporting Actor will be revealed through research. They'll just tell you, of course. But if you go to research why the golden Oscar looks the way it does, it will not be so clearly presented. Research on what the Oscar really is reveals to an idiot reading Wikipedia that it supposedly resembled the uncle of an employee of the Academy in the late 1940s. You see, her uncle's name was Oscar, and it looked like her uncle, so they adopted the name. That makes perfect sense to the average moron on the street. Now, to us, that's the biggest bullshit backstory of all time. Almost everything important in this world has a backstory that is a joke to anybody with a degree of discernment. This is what Wikipedia is for. Wikipedia exists so everybody goes to the same place to be fed the same lie. Every 20 times you use Wikipedia, it will inform you how much you use it, and its little AI will beg for support money. Like it's just a little thing looking out for you that needs handouts. Wikipedia is so important to the not ilk, there will never be a money problem for it. Of course not. If one day it needs $1 billion, that billion will magically appear. The begging for donations is a ruse of it being independent, not associated with the Ministry of Information, of course. It's just looking out for you. So you see that golden thing stroked by Jack Nicholson during his acceptance speech is not Uncle Oscar at all. The golden Oscar most certainly has roots back to the lost phallus of the Egyptian god Osiris and his gold member replacement member. After being defeated by his brother Set, his pecker was cut off and it was given back to him by Isis in the form of a golden dildo and reattached to Osiris. What does that word Osiris sound like? Osiris. And that sounds a little bit like Oscar. Osiris used the Academy Award to mate with Isis to produce the god Horus, who then went on to star in that horrible movie, The Gods of Egypt. An unsung movie star or film director also has a piece missing and is not viewed as whole or complete in the industry unless they've been handed the golden dick to thunderous applause. Of course the golden Oscar award is a penis. Why do you think the thing's hands are all tucked into its sides? And just look at that circumcised head. The real meaning of the Oscar to the creeps could probably take a small book to fully explain if anybody wanted to waste time on it. Either way, I assure you it ain't nobody's Uncle Oscar. These creeps love carrying esoteric and occult meaning hidden in plain sight with a bullshit backstory written for the great unwashed Wikipedia article. I doubt most of the big actors who've been awarded that penis fully understand the ritual that is taking place during their acceptance speech. I know this sounds nuts, but the story about John Bobbitt getting his pecker cut off and then what was it? It was thrown out a car window or something halfway down the block? That also somehow has to relate to what is being discussed here with Osiris. I could be wrong. I've never been to no Eyes Wide Shut party, but this is generally how the creeps do business. That John Bobbitt story is obviously fake. He supposedly had it then reattached and went on to do porn. Yeah, sure, Bo Jackson couldn't even return to the NFL after a hip replacement, and Bo didn't have his entire leg cut off and then thrown out a moving car window. In terms of the official stories that don't hold water, I'm not just talking about the lies that are easy for us to see, like Mattel moon landings and guys in caves with Radio Shack walkie-talkies coordinating the takedown of $2 trillion military defense infrastructure. I'm talking about everything. Everything that authority puts forth as important breaks down as false. What a president is and who he really serves is hidden from us. What money really is and the role banks play never has been presented accurately in a student's textbook. Those strange runes on the back of the dollar bill are clues to what money really is. How every single war started and the reason for it is falsely presented in the history books. Matt Damon pointed us to Howard Zinn's History of the United States in the movie Good Will Hunting, because that's simply another graduated Animal Farm of historical deception, but at a different level, where the hippie readers of it think they found the real truth. Sure, I could spend the next 200 pages diving into absurdities like the Gabrielo Princip Sandwich Man and the Two Asses in a Nation event of Archduke Ferdinand, but I'm not going to do it. I'd sooner believe E.T. and Elliot caused World War I after E.T. dropped an egg down on Ferdinand's head from his bike basket flying 50 feet above the convertible in the moonlight. No world war could have started over the assassination of one Archduke. Probably about 5 people in the entire world liked Ferdinand, and one was his mother. A war could not have started over him getting whacked. Just like Troy would never have been invaded if Helen looked like Roseanne Barr or Ellen. After the news about Ferdinand, some countries would have sent flowers, but other countries would have sent balloons in celebration of what happened to him. Nobody would have gone to war over his hungry Austrian ass. Now, I hear what the World War I historians are yelling back at me, that the assassination was an excuse for war that they wanted to have anyway. Like I've never heard that one before. No idea that one was coming. How much money does your university pay you for those pearls of wisdom? I'm giving you pearls here, Matt. Don't you have a faculty party to go to, dude? Maybe old Ferdinand was just an excuse for the war, but that's a reality giveaway too. Considering the human cost of millions of lives and massive amounts of destruction over thousands of square miles, how is the assassination of one man a good enough excuse to do all that? In other words, what kind of monsters are running things here on Earth if these leaders wanted to go to war in the first place and required a lame Austrian-Hungary fall man to do it? At least if a truly great man was assassinated, one side would have a real beef, and the cause of the war then becomes somewhat believable. For example, exchange Archduke Ferdinand in the story in the convertible with Colonel Sanders. And if you're a lover of fried drumsticks, the reason for World War I then becomes very believable. Another reality giveaway associated with World War I in the story is, after millions dead, nothing much changed after the war. Unless you're some poor bastard living in the Middle East whose borders were realigned through the Sykes-Picot Treaty. Some dude in Iraq found out one day that he could no longer visit his mother, and she lived across the street. Actually, nothing much changes after any war, does it? Isn't that a reality giveaway? Look at Battlestar Galactica, for example. The Cylons against Lauren Green and those ships or whatever. What if the Cylons would have won? They'd have said, okay, here's your ships back, Lauren Green. Take your ragtag fleet and be on your way. You're free. Go ahead, go off. Well, shouldn't you take over everything, assimilate us like the Borg, and then take our ships? No, it just goes back the way it was. That's how this reality seems to work after war. Not much changes. Of course, it's very normal to your best friends and family. As usual, we're just one of those people. How many wars have England, France, Spain, Germany, Prussia, Russia fought in the last 1,000 years? These countries are all still there, except Prussia, which is now a giant mall outside Philadelphia. For all those that happen on the ground, these wars, not much changes after the armistice or the treaty at the end. Some borders change here and there. I mean, little bullshit token shit. Try to pass it off to the people that there was some legitimacy behind it. In the United States, even during the Civil War, South Carolina went back to being South Carolina, and Georgia went back to being Georgia. 2 wars were fought in Iraq recently. For what? It's still there, and so's its falafel. Nothing ever really changes. Perhaps the creep's reason for war is something else that only you'd have to be one of those people to consider. Maybe it's something very dark, related to the harvesting of emotional energy. But most people won't go down these paths. Just turn on CNN, and it will tell you what is so. There's a small group of people here on Earth, you and I, who can easily see through all this fraud, while the majority of the population can't see it, of course. This is yet another symptom of a fake reality, giving itself away. For starters, your brother and your cousin act like they're on some sort of download. They're always unwilling to look at our evidence as we present it. But it's more than that. Things are far stranger in terms of how people react when we want to show them something that we've discovered. I've had friends and family who I've offered to share all my research with, but they'll never sit down with me and look at our evidence. I once tried to talk to my friend Tony about the big day in 2001. I told him I have every detail anybody could possibly ever want on this old Mac here, showing how impossible the official story is. He, of course, said, I'm not going to look at your stuff, Matt. I'll go off and do my own research. They run that same script all the time, you see, which seems to be part of their firmware download. This is how do your own research usually plays out with your friends and family. Of course, the first thing my friend Tony found was the Popular Mechanics article that debunked the big day conspiracy nuts like me. I've read the article. There's nothing to it. There's nothing there. It's like 4 pages long. There are hundreds of anomalies the article doesn't even mention, doesn't even address. And going away from the book for just 1 minute, guys, I had heard about this Popular Mechanics article and, how strong it can be. I was actually like a little afraid to look at it. That, what did we know in 2007, 2008? We weren't certainly as confident in our positions. We're questioning ourselves. What is going on here? Okay, so remember, our mindset, where we're coming from, was a completely different place. So Tony says, the Popular Mechanics article. And I was like, I'm going to have to go look at it. Maybe there's some real strong points here. Because now I'm pretty sure in my new belief set, and I'm not real confident in it in 2008. Okay, that's just me. Now, I go to read it, and then I went, wait a second, where's the rest of it? I read it again. There's nothing here of any substance. What the hell is going on? How could Tony use this as his foundation argument against me? If I would have been prepared to do it back in the day, I would have liked to have asked Tony one question. What did he expect to find while doing his own research? Did he expect multiple articles from sources like the New York Times, Time Magazine, People Magazine to agree with me? Did he expect these articles to say how there's no way in the world that the big day could have been coordinated by a man dragging dialysis machines back and forth across the Tora Bora Mountains? What did Tony think he was going to find going off to do his own research? Did Tony expect that my conclusions would be supported by the Washington Post and the Library of Congress? Did he pause after looking online for 20 minutes and say to himself quietly, "This is strange. All of what Matt is saying is somehow not in these articles. Time Magazine doesn't take any position at all that Matt's presenting." When I checked the Big Day Commission report, that book, and I checked it out at the Library of Congress, Tony may say, I expected a single page to be referring me to the Quantum of Conscious YouTube channel. What the heck did Tony expect to find going off to do his own research? This is the insanity of the download, people. It's like they initially planned to be objective. Like, I'm going to go do my own research, and if that research supports what you're saying, then I'll come around to your position, Matt. But if that research does not support what you're saying in Time Magazine and the New York Times, then I'm going to stick to my guns, Matt, and say you're still a whack job. So let me get this straight. I'm proven wrong if his research doesn't yield giant headlines in the New York Times saying, the conspiracy theorists were right about the big day. All of Congress now should be indicted and impeached immediately. So when my friend Tony's sources of information, like Popular Mechanics magazine, say there was no basis for conspiracy, he came back to me and guess what he said? Matt, there's no basis for conspiracy. Yeah, just like that. Like a parrot on a download. To me, the process he undertook was insane, expecting somehow the mainstream news sources would present my findings fairly, or my side of things. Of course, before he went off to do his own research, I had told him things like this. A hollow airplane wing with no step sign on top of it can't slice through 10,000-pound steel beams and leave the outline of a plane on the building where each 10,000-pound beam was severed by a flimsy wing. I told him all that stuff. But somehow my friend Tony didn't think there was anything wrong with how he went about his research, finding the Popular Mechanics article that, of course, didn't say anything about the common sense things that I was presenting. And in a return email to me, he summarized in bullet point format the Popular Mechanics article that I had already read. So he went out, did his own research, and only took a few articles to cast aside my hundreds and hundreds of hours of research. About 5 years ago, folks, I began to see that people were literally operating on some sort of download, frequency, or radio station. Luckily, we're immune to it. A person may go off to do research for their master's thesis at a university entitled Adolf Hitler, the Man Behind the Mustache. Now, do you think the local JCC, Jewish Community Center library, will tell this researcher the same thing about Hitler that, say, the books collected up by that skinhead guy in the movie Falling Down? You remember the guy who owned the military surplus store? The guy who came up to Michael Douglas, got in his face, and like, you and me, man, what a same, man. What a same. I saw you on TV. You that vigilante guy, man. You and me, what a same. He's like, we're not the same. And then he went out and said nice things to those customers, that certain customers that chose a certain type of lifestyle were shopping in his store. He says, I can't say it. I can't say it. It's funny as shit, the entire scene. I love that movie for some weird, sick way. But point is, the books that he had collected up there back in his little library, back where he kept the gas masks, it's not going to be the same presentation that the JCC would present, now is it? How this world gives itself away as not real is again demonstrated by the Goldilocks principle. One symptom of the Goldilocks principle is how reality can provide conflicting evidence to different researchers at the same time. What each researcher expects to find seems to magically match up with what the person wants to find and expects to find. No real world could do that as many times as we've witnessed this phenomenon. Could any real world even do it once? Related to this principle is the concept of the conspiracy generation machine reality, proven again most recently by Jeff's research. This is where a researcher essentially announces to reality that they're interested in a conspiracy topic, and then two things begin to happen. First, when you combine a black hole with a rabbit hole, it becomes a black rabbit hole. And then what happens to these researchers is the dimensions of the original topic get bigger and bigger. It starts feeding you more and more things to look at, more evidence that leads to the branching off of many more topics, more things for you to waste your time on. The second phenomena is the original topic researched starts linking and trying to tie into other topics that the person has researched in the past, quadrupling the breadcrumbs to chase for every week of research that's put in. Of course, what I'm referring to is not as simple as YouTube showing me related videos or links. I know Google is an expert at that sort of distraction, getting me to click here and there. I'm talking about layered and linked conspiracy in reality itself, for lack of better words. Considered historical events and documented fact in old books and things like that. Things that cannot be created by Google on its own. When you go off to do the research, these breadcrumbs will be confirmed by old books in the library if anybody had the time to go read them. The President Kennedy to President Lincoln synchronicities is a great example of this. That's not a digital AI creation. Go dust off 100-year-old books, and the links between the two events are right there. No real world could see to that. The Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicities, guys, if you don't know it, it's approaching 1 in 100 billion to 500 billion chance. It's 50 things, 50 strange anomalies that line up. No real world could continue to do that. Google will feed you the strange connections, but you can go off to the Library of Congress and find 50 strange links exist in the rare books rooms, if you see what I mean. It's a phenomenon that is compounded by the digital age, of course, which adds to this noise, but not one that is spawned from the digital age, if you see what I mean. Seeing that there's no way this world could be, quote, real is supported by all the strange mysteries and circumstances we've cataloged over many years. At some point, after over a decade of conspiracy research, real people start noticing that the chances of all this nonsense being pulled off the way it has been is about 1 in a trillion. I don't believe in 1 in a trillion anymore, do you? I question 1 in 10 chances presented by poorly acted mall events. There are 2 lists in my prior book. One is called What Are the Chances? The second, If the World Were Real. If you combine the lists in total, which is in the neighborhood of 1,000 unique examples, the probability of all that happening, being pulled off and believed in by the masses, it's a coincidence or a probability of astronomical proportions. And the massive list in the book, my old book that I started in 2018, is just what I cataloged myself. So I must have missed 90% of all the other stuff. All the other impossible fraud presented by this reality through its government's historical text and ministry of information, that all this that people believe in with its presentation never making a single mistake, where everybody points at it and says, that couldn't possibly be real. It always pulls it off. Another symptom of a fake world. And if, by the way, guys, if people are on a download, that's a fake world. Any one of these strange coincidences or synchronicities on the long list can be explained away if it's isolated on its own. But when you put them all together in one giant probability calculation, the chances of it all happening like that surpass 1 in a trillion. For example, one may say, what are the chances the world was lit up in the same color purple on the same day because of 2 supposedly unrelated events? The death of pop star Prince and the Queen's birthday celebration. Then, on top of that, they were both using the same exact slogan, but with a slight difference. Purple Rain for Prince, R-A-I-N, and Purple Rain for the Queen, R-E-I-G-N. Same slogan, same color purple. Put your hands out. Identical. Well, almost. R-E-I-G-N. This one is impressive on its own. Some are not as remarkable on their own. Sure, to your best friend Tony, any one of these is just a pretty interesting, Matt, but they can't even give you that, by the way, but it's just a crazy coincidence. But see, it ceases to be a coincidence when we have 1,000 more of them that we've collected up over a decade. Several of the examples, like the Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicities and a few other oddities, approach over 1 in a billion chance by themselves. A few events expose reality on its own without having to go to any of the other examples. When a probability of anything surpasses, for me, 1 in a million, I don't believe it's random anymore, unless it's followed by a clap of thunder. If the chances of something approaches 1 in a billion, then to me, it actually drops back to 1 to 1, meaning it's not a coincidence at all. It was exactly what was intended before it happened. We have a symptom of this phenomena where the interlinking conspiracy brought on by more research yields the same kind of gematria numbers over and over in a way that no longer can be considered random. For example, our big day in 2001 7-Eleven job application researcher Jeff watched a certain video where men were being turned away from a ferry boat in Lower Manhattan because people were yelling out, "Women and children first! Women and children first!" You could hear this in the video. He showed it to me. I might have showed it to you in a video. In that scene from a blurry home movie, Jeff saw or considered a strange parallel to the Titanic famous story, the Titanic lifeboats of women and children first. He then went on to search that topic, went right over to the Titanic on Wikipedia, knowing that it somehow would create a backlink of sorts to what he was just researching, the big day in 2001. He quickly found a picture of the infamous Captain Smith, where the caption below the picture said, "Captain Smith posing in the year 1911. Captain Smith from the Titanic posing in the year 1911. The picture of Captain Smith, I think it was Wikipedia, it could have been taken in a range over 15 years, but it just happened to be that year, creating the backlink to what Jeff was researching. Jeff wasn't surprised. Neither am I. This fake reality does a lot of this. This, of course, does not mean the Titanic story is in any way real. Likely just the opposite. When reality starts playing these games, then all events are bogus. Of course, the number that is absurdly presented over and over again in this sort of research is 33. It seems like it's in almost everything we dive into anymore. Everything we look at, reality just has to present the number 33 prominently, at least a few times. For years, as first-grade truthers, all we could do was cry out that the secret societies are planting the number. It's all we could comprehend. Now we look in other places, fortunately. Today we see that every incidence or presentation of the number 33 being planted by secret societies is beyond absurd, although that may happen from time to time. Because whatever part of the spell, whatever they're trying to present, of course they do. The Not Milk presents it from time to time. Also comes out of reality itself. In most instances, in my opinion, in terms of the thousands and thousands of times we've seen it now, reality itself somehow produces the 33. And the secret societies have adopted the number because they recognized its power long before we did. If the editor of a large newspaper leads with the number 33 in a headline or the title of a story, and the story is, say, somehow related to conspiracy in some way or a topic that we would look into, that doesn't mean the editor is in on it. We know this now. Doesn't mean they got secret orders. Doesn't mean it was necessarily planted. Comes out of reality itself, even if it's that person simply on what we would call the download. That's still coming out of reality itself. The person that created the story, all we could come up in the past, they got a call from the Men in Black. Make sure you put the 33 in the headline. That's absurd at this point. Comes from reality, like the magenta is popping through reality as well. It's nice and it's tough. It's planted and it flows through reality. The magenta as well as the numbers do. Every headline where we see the number 33 is implanted. We know that now. This illusory world is built on a foundation that continuously needs to express itself through certain numbers and gematria. It's not as simple as saying that the 33 is the number that is always attached to fraudulent cake-and-a-lake events, although that does happen a lot, no doubt about it. But it's not just that. It's more than that. When I see the number in a video that I'm making, you know what happens? It becomes an, oh no, moment. We find humor in it. We better find humor in this reality as it presents itself at this point. We go nuts. The 33 seems to always pop up. Sometimes the number may be planted by dark figures like we talked about in cake and lake events, but it's more than that. A fake reality that was likely built for us must leave breadcrumbs and markers that reveals its true nature, and it's doing it more often than it ever has. If troll truth channels can get you to believe that it's always just planted, and shield truth channels, it's always just the secret societies, then that is presenting itself like a graduated animal farm. If you believe it's always planted by dark forces, then you're not understanding what's really going on here. That's why they plant it potentially a lot from time to time. There might be other reasons associated with whatever creepy buttons and levers, reality buttons and levers they need to present. They use their gematria, they use their power numbers, things I don't care to understand. It's not all or none. Much of it may be planted so our community can't see past that as a possibility. Can't see that it could be coming from reality itself. Not just the numbers, like 33, again, the magenta. T-Mobile has chosen to use the magenta, of course. It seeks a trademark on its magenta and all related colors. But even in this arena, the magenta bleeds through reality as well. It's not planted. Is it planted into the aurora borealis that a lot of smart people I trust, say the aurora borealis has changed? Okay, I understand there could be a natural reason for it, chemicals in the air, etc. But they're saying it was basically 98% green when they were a kid, not 50-50, red/magenta to the emerald green now. Okay, could be chemicals in the air. There are other reasons I believe, and others like Jeff believe, it's bleeding through reality, this color magenta. That means it's not all planted. Of course, the amount of times the number 13 is presented on the back of the dollar bill is there intentionally planted. That whole presentation on the back of the dollar is as creepy as it gets. I'm no expert in sigil magic, but the symbols, the numbers, this is literally, from their perspective of the creeps, reality buttons and levers. Of course, the number 13 in its presentation contributes in some way to its dark spell. I can't speak any more about it than that. We know it's there. That's all we need to know. Then we can try to remove our own attention and energy from it. Do the best we can. We don't need to fully understand it and worry about your self-journey. But Matt, doesn't completing our individual spiritual journey require us to understand every single aspect of what's on the back of the dollar bill? No, other than basically what it's trying to do to you in terms of what that little eye is and the pyramid and why the capstone. Oh, let's talk for 18 million years why the capstone is separated and this and that. Well, every little bit other than what it's trying to do to us, which we know. Other than that, I don't care about its little symbolic horse shit. Okay, fine. Maybe a basic understanding is in order. Like first grade truther comes along and be like, oh, you're talking about the 13 presentations with the 13 arrows, the 13 olive branches or leaves. Oh, Matt, that's because of the 13. That's because of the 13 colonies, the 13. Oh, really? Pootie Tang Award. No, sorry. It's just the opposite. The original number of colonies was chosen to be 13 because that number possesses some sort of weird power that the creeps understand. It's special to the creeps and those who know how to wield it. I don't care to know how to wield it. It's not part of my way about myself journey. We'll never fully understand their creepiness. That's not a cop-out. That's the superior position. Real people don't need their parlor tricks. Thanks for listening.